Thank you for tuning in to Gain and Glow, a feel-good lifestyle podcast with me, Vanessa.
And me, Crystal.
Oh, hello. So
Welcome.
Welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to talk about feeling your feelings.
Yes.
Feel your feels. So with basically the state of the world and the current social and political climate and all of the recent events of 2020, I think a pretty consistent theme across the board amongst everyone that I know, both professionally, personally, and just visually through social media, I think consistently I'm seeing everyone is feeling their feels in so many different ways, and there's so many different feelings that are coming about from everything that's happening, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. It's just been on my mind, so I wanted to talk about it and discuss it, and I recently had an interaction with my kid that really put it on the forefront of my mind, so I figured why not do an episode about it.
So to kick us off, we're going to do our dope quote of the week from Eleanor Roosevelt. There is not human being from whom we cannot learn something if we are interested enough to dig deep. And I like that.
I like that.
I mean, we constantly have to dig deep to figure out what's going on with us, how should we handle situations, in order to learn and grow, you have to be open to that.
And it kind of plays on our dope quote, not last week, but the week before, about basically if you want things to change, you have to keep moving forward. And I know that I feel like I'm just in this constant state of self-reflection, and I always say that I am painfully self-aware, excruciatingly self-aware. Most of my anxiety is dependent upon the actions that I've taken over the past lifetime. But when we self-evaluate and we take the time to dig deep and we look into ourselves, we can really grow from that. And also in that, you kind of start to learn how to dig deep into other people. And I think that plays such an important role in identifying your feelings, understanding where they're coming from, and working through them more effectively and continue to grow to be a better person. I know I just want to be better than I was yesterday and the day before and the day before. And I feel like that's a safe, healthy goal.
Right? Your main competition is yourself, right?
Exactly. And I know from us talking before, it's so funny, the deeper that I dig and the more and more I really acknowledge my feelings and how I process my emotions, the more and more I realize that I was so programmed from such an early age to operate the way that I do. I know that you and I, we share this, we relate in this, and I've met quite a few people in our age range who have had similar experiences with their families. Whether you had the most functional family or the most dysfunctional family, I feel like there's just this constant theme of not showing emotions. Expressing sadness publicly, brings upon shame. And I know that I was raised in environments where it wasn't really a normal thing to talk about our feelings or to show our feelings, especially if those were sad. Sad feelings were so uncomfortable. And being too, intimate is a weird word for me to say, but being too, deep was uncomfortable in a lot of the households that I lived in and growing up and stuff. So I'm realizing more and more as an adult that I'm having to normalize feeling things. To the point where some movies will make me so deeply uncomfortable to watch in front of other people because I know they're going to make me cry. And I always make the joke, Disney movies are so scary to me because they make me feel my own feelings. So it's the main thing I won't watch with other people is Disney. And I'm realizing it's stemming from being young and being told, you know, like, I'll give you something to cry about, or, you know, just those things that generationally have not aged well in parenting. But
Yeah.
I think that most of us experience, and it's created this weird, uncomfortable feeling around feelings until now. There's so much more of a conversation about it.
Yeah, I think that's so important too, is like we have that we continue, like we have the conversation and we continue to have the conversation
Mm-hmm.
because we need to normalize that everyone goes through feelings. It's like there's no reason to man up or, like you like keep smiling because that's what you should do as a woman. It's like all that stuff. It's just kind of it's like that's not who we are. That's not this generation. And we've got like we've got all the access to information on our fingertips. And so to see people living all kinds of different lives and then also connecting with people so easily, showing that yeah, a lot of people have had a lot of traumatic stuff happen in their lives and it's normal. It's like you should talk about it. You should work through it. You should do what you can to improve your life. And that wasn't a thing for me growing up. I looked at my friends with normal parents like, oh, that's what that's like. Like, and even then, like normal is very subjective. I mean, to me, I'm like, oh, you have two parents and they're throwing you a party and you have like a veggie tray and a cake and and I'm like, it's just that's not my experience. It's like, I lost my mom passed away when I was young, and so I was raised by a single dad, and like I lived with my grandma for a small amount of time, but it was very much like my dad was my dad already had 4 kids before me, so he was an old dad. And yeah, he would do that whole like, why are you crying? Stop crying. I'm going to yell at you till you stop crying, which, only makes you cry harder. And so as you grow up, you're like, oh, I can't cry because it'll just cause anger from my dad, and I don't want that. And so you weirdly like adjust to your scenarios that you grow up on. And then I grew up and I was like, why are you crying at a movie? And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. If my brain just maxed out, it was like, yep, yeah, you're going to cry at movies now. And I was like, what? I was never that person. And I'm like, did I just like suddenly develop empathy? I don't know.
It's so funny. So what I went through, my childhood was tumultuous, or however is a nice way to put it. And I went through experiences of being told, like, walk it off, cowgirl up was one that I heard a lot, which was more so in love, but it was like always emphasized that you don't sit in something too long. Like, if you're feeling sad, that's okay for a split second, but, wipe your tears and move on. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't cry in front of other people. And as I got older, I developed all of these mechanisms, and I became very rough around the edges. And then I went through some other experiences that caused me to kind of harden that exoskeleton a little bit more. And after a while, it just became part of my personality that I showed no emotion that was anything other than like extreme happiness or like anger. So tears and crying and emotions were not a thing that I did. It was just part of who I was now. I was just a solid person. And then I experienced what I like to call the Titanic effect. Well, so in that time, I would watch the movie Titanic, and I would always think that Rose had plenty of room on that freaking door or whatever it was. Like, I was in that mindset where I was like, I don't understand why he like froze to death. Like, that was ridiculous. Pull him up. You have plenty of room. Like, come on. Like, this is ridiculous. And then I had a child. And the Titanic effect is where all of a sudden, somehow, I went from thinking that way to thinking, oh my God, this is heartbreaking. They died, or he died loving her.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, a movie that literally had no emotional effect on me before became so emotional. I started realizing that the old couple died together in bed, and that caused me to like have a whole emotional situation. And then the Rose situation became very emotional for me, and all of a sudden this weird empathy and like sympathy feeling happened. Like motherhood made me soft. Like it softened this wall. But when you spend like 20 something years not having that and all of a sudden you have it, it's incredibly hard to navigate. So I went whoosh to the wrong side.
I think that might have been it for me too, was kind of like not parenting, obviously, but moving to a different state. And then it's like, it's just you and your choices, and you don't know anybody. So there's no one to like act for. Like there's no one to hold up a way of being. Like you get to be whoever you want to be. And I think really being away from everyone I knew like allowed me to feel all that.
Yeah, you get to this point where you realize now you have to create a structure of who you want to be as a person, and the only building blocks you have are these weird natural emotions that are coming through and all of your learned experiences up until that point. And it's almost like you're given a puzzle that has no reference picture. Like there's no reference. Yeah. And most of the pieces are the same color. So they're in the same section potentially. That's it. Like mental health in general and feelings in general are like a huge puzzle. Like you have to piece it together and figure it out. You really gotta look at each one.
Right. I love that there was like a post someone, I think it went viral. I think even Ellen might have posted it, but it was like a puzzle and they're like done, and it was just all the green pieces were together and all the brown pieces were together, the shape of a horse. But it wasn't put together at all.
Which I honestly, that's how I feel. I feel like I am a person that represents that right there. Like I have just organized the pieces that make the most sense in the most realistic pattern and just tried to figure that out. Yeah,
just nice little piles.
Exactly. Piles. Happy piles. So it's interesting though. The more and more I dig into it and the more and more I think about it, I realize like it's such important work to do though. It's really important work to identify identifying your feelings, and part of that is feeling them, which is so uncomfortable. It's just incredibly uncomfortable.
Definitely. And I think like you said before, like just this year has allowed so much room for introspection. Yes. And you're like, how do I handle like all these feelings? And everyone has experienced them all at the same time, which is part of why like taking a break of social media was like so important for me, because everyone's just swarming with all of their feelings, all their thoughts. And you're like, well, I need to really like acknowledge how I'm feeling and deal with that. Mm-hmm. Because without doing that, you can't do anything else. You're just going to be in this like agitated state.
And acknowledging those feelings can help us work through them. Yeah. Which I think is something that took a while for me to have like click until I've had experiences where I've done that.
Definitely. A big one for me was really dealing with my anxiety. It was like until I realized I was having anxiety and what panic attacks were, I just thought I was literally pushing the negativity back somewhere. I would go to work and I'm like, whatever, I have to do this commute, whatever, I have to work here, whatever. And then once I eventually got so bad that I came up so overwhelmed, it was like, no, you need to deal with that. Like, you don't like your commute. You don't like your job. Like, you don't like not having a car. Like you need to make something change for you in a good way in order for your feelings to change. Like, you're putting yourself in the same position and expecting something different. And so even like right now, so like a habit I've learned is if I'm upset and about something and I'm like with my husband, and he'll tell me like, there's nothing you can do about it, so there's no reason to be upset. And I'm like, well, that's true. I'm also pretty upset So I'm going to choose to be upset for a few minutes. And if, you know, I don't even say if that bothers you, you can leave. But like, I think just me saying that out loud, he's like, oh, okay. Well, then I'm just going to, you know, keep looking at my phone and not worry about you, which is like, that was such a powerful thing for me because I just declare, like, this is how I'm feeling right now. That's all I'm dealing with right now. And I just deal with it. And then I get through it. Like, and then I move on. And then there was no tension between me and my husband. I was allowed to feel my feelings without worrying about, you know, most of the time what I used to do was I would just be quiet and just be like, oh, I'm upset, whatever, and just like not say anything. And then that would make me more upset because then I start spinning my wheels thinking that I'm probably agitating him with being agitated, which it's not my responsibility to try and like handle his emotions on top of my emotions.
And it's such a hard balance. It's such a hard balance to acknowledge and own it and just be like, look, I'm legitimately mad right now. And there's nothing you can do or say that's going to make me feel less mad. I just need to feel mad. Like, I just need to be mad at the situation and get it out. Like, some people, you know, they'll sit and meditate on it, or some people, like, may go punch a punching bag or whatever. But yeah, me. But you know, it's so powerful to just own it, to just like tell that person, don't worry about what I'm feeling because I'm just feeling it. Like I'm just legitimately mad. There's no real problem right now that you need to fix. You just gotta you just gotta back off and let me feel that. And then in other times, owning it enough to reach out to somebody and say, I'm feeling this way and I need you to do something for me. And just owning it, just admitting it and owning it, and realizing that the feelings that result from an interaction or some kind of occurrence, they happen on their own and naturally derive from our minds and our subconscious or wherever. That means that they're valid. They happen naturally, which means that they're valid. So if you're feeling mad about an interaction, it's valid because it's a natural occurrence. It made you mad. So good, you're mad. Perfect. Own it. Say, that made me mad for this reason. Boom. And then you can just move through it. Figure out if you need a resolution or if you just need to feel mad for a little bit, and then you can move on with the rest of your day.
Yeah, because feelings change throughout the whole entire day, and we don't even realize it. And sometimes it's really easy for us to just hold on to a bad moment and think about it all day until the day's over, and then you think you had a bad day when you really had a bad moment and you focused on it all day.
Mm-hmm. I know it's interesting. Like, there's some days where I feel like I'm like on the verge of like crying all day long. Like, every little thing makes me literally feel like tearing up. And it can be things like positive things where I'm watching a show and something stupid will happen, like something so trivial or small, but to me I'm like, oh my god, it's so sweet. Or it'll like trigger a thought that brings like tears to the forefront of my brain. And especially when I'm feeling like waves of like grief from losing loved ones or whatever it is. And on those days, I'll catch myself like 3 interactions or situations deep where I've had the same response of almost crying. I realize that there's a consistent theme happening throughout my day with my feelings. And that's a feeling of sadness or, you know, crying of some, you know, from somewhere, someplace. And I realize it's probably not just those instances. I just feel that way. I just feel sad sometimes. And then I realized that if my immediate response to everything is to cry, maybe I legitimately just need a good cry. So on those days, I'll force myself. Like, I'll go watch a movie. Like, if it's a day where I'm about to cry at every freaking wedding proposal on Facebook and military dad coming home and one of those, then I'll go watch a sweet movie and just have a good cry. A good cry where I'm not going to be embarrassed if somebody walks in on me. Like, I'm just going to feel it and realize that I just had it built up for some reason, and I can dig into that later. But right now, I'm just going to feel that emotion and let it happen. And 9 times out of 10, I feel so much better at the end of it. And I see some people deal with it with like meditating afterwards, or praying if they're religious, or, you know, whatever you do in your own like life to get to feel better. I think that just giving yourself that chance to feel those feelings first and then find your way out of it, it greatly improves my day. Usually I have a good cry and then I'm like, bam, I'm better. I got it out. I'm better. And I had actually a moment with my daughter, because I always preach this to her. If I see her on a day where she didn't get enough sleep, or she's just not feeling great, and I can see her having an emotional response to different interactions or conflict, I always encourage her to feel it. I always tell her, like, you're having an emotional response to everything. Maybe you just need to have a good cry. And one day, we were schooling from home. I'm working from home. I've got dogs just being in a mood. You know, everyone's feeling cooped up. It was just one of those days where everything stacked up. Dishes had to be done before breakfast, so then I was hangry, and, you know, it was just one of those days. And she was also having one of those days. And we had a little mini conflict going over her math homework, and I just hit my wall. I started to cry. So I like ran away to my office, tried to hide from her. She saw, came in, she started crying. I was crying. She's trying to apologize. I'm trying to apologize. And we had this moment though where I just looked at her and I told her, this is one of those days where I needed to have a good cry because I'm just overwhelmed. It's not you. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. And so we had like a good cry together because she acknowledged that she was having the same day. And then we like cracked a couple of jokes, made each other laugh, and legit had one of the most smooth, most relaxing days after that. And it was such an important moment as a parent, but also as a person who wants to just so badly improve on myself and be aware effectively so I can be, you know, less flawed down the road. It was an important step, and it's just been on my mind. I just had to share it with everybody because it's just so important to feel your feelings and to normalize that. If someone's crying, it's not a shame-worthy thing. It's a feeling. These things happen naturally and they're valid, and everybody is allowed to feel their feelings constructively.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Oh, I can't imagine, you know, raising a child just going through, like, they're going through emotions constantly. Like we all are, but we put these weird little blocks on ourselves on what we can feel and show to others and stuff. And kids, it's like they just feel it. They're just going through it. But they do get very, like, you know, we all get self-conscious about how we appear to be because we're having, you know, emotions and difficult emotions. And it's like, I think it is really important to talk more about it, because some people who have, you know, like mental illness that it affects them every day, it's like you can't see it, but they're, you know, people are struggling, and like we all have like our own little mental struggles, and some of it, it's like it's just trying to, you know, I don't know, do a full-time job and be a teacher to your child while during forest fires and a pandemic. No big deal. Like there's no like emotional rule book for that.
And I think the number one thing it's taught me is like empathy. To be empathetic towards other people. Like it helps move through, because sometimes you'll have an interaction with somebody and you'll come away from it feeling not great. Like not great. I know I've had interactions where I come away from it and I'm like, wow, that pissed me off. Like I'm like mad about that. But then I've really started to learn to like think about, okay, well, where were they coming from? What are they, like maybe they're feeling anxious and cooped up and they lashed out at me because of it, because I may be a bit guilty of doing that every now and then too. So, and it just kind of, it's shown me how to like come outside of my own head for a second and digging into other people as much as I dig into myself.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially you have a situation where you get upset and you're absorbing, like you're dealing with that feeling, and so it's hard to even think about what the other person's feeling or why they might have said something. I recently had like a small argument with a friend who who it just left the conversation. I tried not to like voice any frustration about what had been said because I felt like it was very personal of me to get agitated by it, and it wasn't really anything that they specifically did. And then later, it just bugged me because I felt like why are you making that choice? It's like, well, they're making that choice and they're making it for themselves, and it really doesn't have anything to do with me, and they just happen to like share that bit of information with me. So it's like let it go. And then later they even felt the need to apologize because they felt like they were agitated at me after I was agitated at them, and I'm like, well, I shouldn't have even been agitated with you. But it's like it's nice to like get through that, and then it's like, oh, we're fine, everything's fine. Like it was a moment. It's like you went through a little bit of emotions, and I totally like agree with you with like needing a good cry every now and then. It's like I spent so much time like trying not to cry over or certain things that like once I started therapy, I just started bawling to a complete stranger. Like every time we talked, I was like, I'm in a safe space. And I had to like normalize crying again. I didn't even realize how much I needed to do it. But it's like your emotions will pass, the day will pass, like time keeps on spinning. And so it is important to like acknowledge it and like work through it in whatever way you need to work through it. And I like how you like touched on meditation, because I've been trying to I mean, we all know I've been trying to do it more consistently. And one thing they had on the Headspace app was had like a meditation about grief. And when I like my dad passed away, I would say lost somebody, like I lost them in the woods.
Right. But isn't that weird how we phrase it like that? I lost someone.
I was trying not to say that. I'm like, they lost them. How did they lose them? When my dad passed away last year, I had like hadn't even really been meditating a whole lot, but I was like, I think I need something to work through this grief, because it's really weird to have someone you love live in a different state, pass away, and there's no funeral, like there's no like family getting together, like it's just it was such a weird experience. And one day the grief meditation, I was like, oh, this is nice. This is just kind of like having someone talk a little bit about what grief is like and how it's okay that you're going to go through all these emotions and you're not really going to know what to experience, but it's okay because you just need to focus on the moment. And it's really just about breathing right now and feel however you feel right now. And in that time, I felt pretty calm, and I felt glad to feel calm. And then another day, I was feeling really upset, and I listened to the grief meditation again, and it was like, I need a ball today. Because it's like, especially if someone passes away, it's like you go through all the thoughts of like all of the experiences you've had with this person. So you have ups and downs. And so your emotions are ups and downs. And I like children for the example that they can get through an emotion and just turn it around. And the next minute they're like running and playing, and it's no big deal. And it really reminds you like how quickly life continues.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I think losing somebody, having a family member pass away, someone who's very significant and important in your life, can teach you a lot about feeling your feelings, because like you said, it's such a wave. It is such a wave. When I lost my grandpa, I think it's been like 4 years or something now. I don't even know. Maybe 2 years. I don't know. Time like blends, where it's like you go through these waves where one minute you're calm and you're fine and everything's fine, and then the next minute it just all comes down on you. And I know the first few weeks after he passed, he was like incredibly important to me, one of my best friends. So for the first few weeks, I was like in this state of just like, how does the world continue to world now? You know, like where emotions are even so unidentifiable. It's such a hard process to work through. But then you get to that point when you're kind of on the out, that you're getting kind of out of that portion of it, and then here come the tears in weird waves. And I had a crash course in getting comfortable with crying in public, because I went to Walmart, like, I don't know, 6 months after he passed. I went to Walmart and I found a candle called Flannel Embrace by like Glade or one of those. And he used to smell like Old Spice and like, and like Newport cigarettes. Like, I don't know, I can't identify what he smelled like, but he had a significant smell and I just had so much emotion because I used to, lay on his chest and like smell him, his cologne and stuff. I smelled this candle, just looking for a candle, just minding my business, and it smelled exactly like him. And I bawled in the middle of Walmart. And then I immediately bought like $54 worth of candles. I bought every one of them that they had almost. And I was just like crying in Walmart. And it was so embarrassing. But afterwards, though, I was like, I don't care. It made me happy to find something that made me feel connected to him. And I don't care if that made other people feel uncomfortable, because that's how I felt, and those were my feelings, and it's allowed, because I loved him and I miss him, and that's that. Like, it was one of those moments where I was like, well, I'm just gonna let that be where it was.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And then you get the candles, and then when you smell those candles, you'll be like, you're gonna have days where it'll make you sad, and there's gonna be days where it just makes you so happy because you feel like you still have like a nice little reminder of him.
Yeah. So to wrap up this episode, let's normalize feeling emotions and realize that they're valid, and you feel some kind of way about things because you're touched by it in some way based on a past experience or your current experiences. And once you start to really feel those feelings, you can dig into them, you can acknowledge them, you can identify where they come from, and you can work through it or embrace it and just say, like, I'm okay that sometimes it makes me cry and sometimes it makes me laugh, because that's normal, and I'm just human feeling my feels.
Definitely.
Thank you for tuning in to Gain and Glow, our Feel Good podcast. I'm Vanessa.
I'm Crystal.
Take a deep breath. You got this. Yeah. Until next time, guys. Thanks. Bye.